Hey peeps, what's up? Manchi here, back with another video, and today we're going to talk about cloud computing. So we'll tell you what is cloud computing, why is it called cloud computing, and then we're going to tell you the advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing. The video is divided into chapters with the relevant timestamps linked in the description of this video, and without any further delay, let us get down to business. We will start off with what is cloud computing. So, if you go to Wikipedia, the definition of cloud computing is that it is the on demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage and computing power, without direct active management by the user. Large clouds often have functions distributed over multiple locations, each of which is a data center. So let us go back in history. Let us say we are in the early 1990s and you are a new hospital and you have set up your building and you also want your patients to have access to their reports, etc., via the internet. So what do you need to do? You need to set up a server, a website wherein they can access all their details, and you will have to maintain that server, the storage, the air conditioning for the server room, and make sure that it is available to all your customers as you grow. So basically, you have to have the server, the storage, everything inside the premises of your hospital, and then you have to maintain it. And of course, as more and more patients come, you will have to expand the capabilities of that server, the storage, to handle more data. But as the hospital, eventually you will have to hire some third party to maintain that computer system, that server, that access of reports by the patients, because your specialty is medicine. Your specialty is not maintaining computer systems. And then let us assume further down the line, your hospital hits a roadblock and it is not doing well anymore. The number of patients are decreasing, but you have already invested in buying this extra hardware, extra servers to support the increasing number of patients, but things did not go as planned. Now you're sitting on top of this bunch of hardware which you don't really need. So the big shots like Amazon thought of this. They are like, hey, people are investing their money in the computer business by buying the hardware. What if we can rent it out to them? So that is where the concept of cloud came in. Big companies like Amazon, Google, IBM, Microsoft, all of them invested in big data centers wherein they put in all of this computing power and then they sold it to the businesses like, hey, one, you do not need to do the initial investment in all the hardware. You can rent it out from us. Then the second thing is you have to pay for only what you use. So let us say today I have 100 patients and I am storing, say, data for 100 patients. Tomorrow, if I am doing it for 10,000 patients, I can do that without having to worry about buying new hardware, because the cloud computing big shots provide you the ability to scale up your business as and when needed. And let us say in our example, we said that, hey, eventually down the line, the hospital didn't do well and the number of patients started decreasing. So again, these cloud providers do give you the option of scaling down as well when needed. So now, as the hospital owner, I am not sitting on top of this big hardware, a huge investment, which now is of no use to me because my hospital business has eventually failed. But I was able to rent out all the computing power, storage, etc., server maintenance, and I was able to scale it up when needed and scale it down when needed. So this is the basic concept of cloud computing. You are actually just using everything as a service. So your computing power, your storage, you're using it as a service from a third party like Amazon AWS, Google, IBM, Microsoft Azure, and you can scale up and down when needed. Now, $1 million question here would be, why is it called cloud computing? Well, where did the word cloud come from? I'm not sure whether you know or not, but when the telephone was first invented, you would have a manual operator who would switch the lines so that you can connect to the person on the other end. Then they automated that. So if you were to make a network diagram of a telephone call between two persons, or look at one from back in the day, you would see a person with a phone here, a person with a phone there, and then you would have, say, two arrows going to somewhere in the sky, and they would say a cloud over there, which would connect the phone call. So that is something like kind of a magic which is happening, but in reality, as an end user, I really don't care what is happening behind the scenes for me to connect to the other person. So a network diagram would depict that black box as a cloud. Similarly, if you have a look at a network diagram for an internet, or how they try to explain the internet to an end user, or like somebody sitting on a computer and then there's a lightning bolt, and then that lightning strike or lightning bolt is connected to a cloud wherein you would write it as the internet. So put it into very simple layman terms, cloud computing, the basic concept here is that whatever the location of the actual server you're using, the hardware, the operating system on what that server is running is totally irrelevant to you. You really don't care whether it is being run on a mainframe, on an old computer, on a bunch of computers, or you really don't care how you're getting that storage, that expandability, the hardware, the server, the RAM. So that is something which is totally transparent to you. And if you were to tell me, hey Manji, isn't this very similar to what we used to see in the old movies, that you have a mainframe at a location and then people are accessing it through a green screen with text scrolling, a black and green screen, a black and white screen? Yes, this is very similar to that, just that, cloud, the word cloud is just good when it comes to marketing. Now, another example of cloud computing could be, let us say you are a software development organization and all the computers which you have are Windows, but all of a sudden you need, or you decide that, hey, I want to develop something for Mac OS. How do I do that on a Windows computer? Well, rather than investing in buying highly expensive Mac computers, sorry, can't call it Mac computers, right? Rather than investing in buying Macs, what you can do is you can go to one of these cloud providers and you can get a virtual computer which is running Mac OS, and then you can do your Mac OS development through that virtual computer which is running on a cloud, which is eventually running on these big data centers wherein these big companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM have invested in. And before you ask me, hey Manji, how would an individual benefit from this? Well, if you're an individual developer, again, you can try out Mac OS on the cloud. You can try out Linux if you want to on the cloud. I know a lot of custom ROM developers use Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services to create a virtual computer running Linux and then build custom ROMs of that, instead of having to invest in big computers or highly powerful computers to build Android from source. And do keep in mind, one of the biggest media providers, which is Netflix, does run on Amazon AWS, and Amazon's own website also runs on Amazon AWS. So Netflix can actually scale up and scale down as and when needed based on the number of users, and then of course it is pay as you go, so you do not have to invest in all those big servers which you would have to do in the early 1990s. Now let us talk about the advantages of cloud computing. So the first advantage of cloud computing is agility. So as I mentioned earlier, let us say you have an app which is right now supported for Windows, but eventually you want the same app for, say, Android and Mac OS. How do you do that? Well, instead of investing in Macs so that you can develop apps for Macs, all you have to do is go to, say, Amazon AWS, and then you can say that, hey, I want a Mac OS image on a virtual computer, and you have to deploy that, and bam, there it is. You have a virtual computer running Mac OS, and now you can develop apps for Mac OS, iOS within a few hours, instead of, if you were in the 1990s, you would have to procure all the Mac hardware, then set it up, which could eventually take days. But in today's world, you can start developing apps for different platforms within hours by using cloud computing. Next up, there are lower costs. So again, you do not have to procure the hardware. You can actually rent it out, use it virtually, thereby reducing your initial investment. And if you feel that, hey, now that I have settled down, my apps are doing good, my business is doing good, but if I go ahead and procure the hardware, it will be cheaper for me, then you have that option as well. But if you're fine with paying for the cloud, then there's nothing better than that, because eventually you can also scale it up. Which brings us to our next advantage of cloud computing, which is scalability and being global. So let us say you have a website which is currently popular in the United States and you are running it off AWS and your server is in the United States. Tomorrow or day after, you see that, hey, you're getting a lot of hits from India, and you will notice that, hey, because the virtual server is located in United States, the response time for users in India will of course be a bit slow when compared to the users in United States. But you want to make sure that they have the same experience, that is the loading time of the website is fast. So what you can do is, like, you can deploy your website to a virtual server which is closer to India, thereby reducing the loading times of that website for users in India, and all of this can be done within hours. So again, cloud computing does help your websites to become global and you can scale them as needed. And then last but not the least, you also have the flexibility because of the pay as you go model. So again, going back to a previous example of the hospital, initially you went on the cloud and you noticed that, hey, my user base is increasing and I need to buy more storage, more computing power. Instead of buying the hardware, because you hosted it on the cloud, you can increase the computing power, the storage within hours to handle the increased customer base. But eventually you noted that, hey, the customer base is going down due to unforeseen circumstances. So then you can scale it down and say you had 10 virtual servers or 10 computing powers or 10 hard disks running in the virtual cloud. You can actually scale that down to 5 to 1 as and when needed, without having to do the initial investment in the hardware, and then you are only paying for the resources which you are using. Next up, let us talk about the disadvantages of cloud computing. So the first disadvantage of cloud computing is downtime. Now this downtime can occur either due to your hardware failure, but that is something which can be overcome because you might be creating images or you have spread your website or your app through multiple virtual servers. But what if there is loss of internet from those virtual servers? Remember, everything is running off the internet. So if those servers, your virtual servers, don't have internet access, then that is downtime. Now do note, in 2017, AWS or Amazon Web Services had an issue of downtime which cost like 150 million US dollars. Now of course, this downtime can happen even if you have the hardware on your own premises, but it can happen if you have your website, your app, whatever you're using, hosted on the cloud. The second disadvantage is security and privacy. Now, everything is online over here in the cloud model, everything is on the internet. So hackers out there are always looking to get your data from these big corporations. So security and privacy is a big concern and a big disadvantage of cloud computing, because somebody sitting somewhere can have access to your data because everything is on the cloud. And in the past, I think Microsoft Azure had an exploit in their database, which did result in some data being leaked. So they do have to maintain their products or the services which they are providing and make sure that they are free of any exploits, because hackers out there are sitting looking for exploits in the services provided by these cloud providers so that they can get access to your data. The third disadvantage is vendor lock-in. It is not easy to switch between Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS or Google Cloud Platform or the IBM Cloud. These services are designed to lock you in. They are not designed to make it easy to switch from one cloud provider to another. And there it is, peeps. That was our video for today about what is cloud computing, why is it called cloud computing, along with the advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing. Of course, if you did like the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.